I've been driving trucks for over a decade, and the road has shown me things I still can't explain. Most nights, it's the same routine, just endless stretches of highway, radio static, and the hum of the engine keeping me company. But sometimes, something happens out there that stays with you. This is one of those nights. It was late summer, hot during the day, but cooling fast once the sun went down. I'd been running a load eastbound through Oklahoma, somewhere between Clinton and Weatherford. That stretch is flat and quiet, just 2 lanes each way, fields on both sides, and the occasional rest area lit up like an island in the dark. I remember checking the clock, 11:30 p.m. My eyes were heavy, but I wasn't tired enough to stop. The CB chatter had died down, and the road was practically empty. I turned the radio down low and just let the wheels eat up the miles. That's when I saw him. At first I thought it was a hitchhiker. My headlights caught a figure standing in the median, right there between the eastbound and westbound lanes. He wasn't waving or trying to cross, just standing perfectly still like he'd been dropped there. He wore a long coat, old-fashioned, heavy-looking even in the summer heat. Something about him immediately felt wrong. He wasn't facing traffic. He wasn't moving. He was just staring straight ahead into the darkness, like the road itself had his attention. And the strangest part, my headlights never seemed to touch his face. The shadows clung to him, like his features didn't want to be seen. I slowed down a little, told myself it was just a trick of the light. Maybe a tired farmer, maybe a drunk, maybe even a mannequin somebody had dumped out there. But as I passed, a chill went through me. He didn't turn his head. He didn't flinch at the rush of a 40-ton rig barreling by. He just stood there, fixed in place. I shook it off, muttered something under my breath, and kept rolling. About 10 miles later, I started to forget about him. That's when I saw him again. Same coat, same posture, same exact stance. But this time, he was on the other side of the highway, standing in the westbound median. I swear on my life, there was no way he could have gotten there. That stretch of road is straight as an arrow, and there were no exits, no turnarounds, no place to hide. I should have seen him cross, but I didn't. He was just there, waiting. My stomach sank. I gripped the wheel tighter, leaned forward like it would help me make sense of what I was seeing. I didn't call it in this time. What was I supposed to say? Hey, dispatch, there's a ghost in a trench coat pacing me down the interstate. I killed the radio completely. The static between stations had started hissing, and every song sounded warped, like the voices were slowed down just enough to feel wrong. The silence felt safer somehow, but it didn't last. By the time I reached the next rest stop, my nerves were shot. I pulled in under the buzzing lights and parked near the bathroom building. Only one other truck was there, dark and quiet. I figured I'd splash some water on my face, shake off the road, maybe convince myself I was just overtired. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed and flickered overhead. I leaned over the sink, stared at my reflection, and almost didn't recognize the guy staring back. Pale skin, bloodshot eyes, jaw tight from clenching my teeth. I turned on the faucet, let the water run cold, and splashed it over my face. That's when the lights went out. No flicker, no dimming, just pitch black. I froze, couldn't even see my own hands in front of me. Then I heard it, boots on tile. Slow, heavy, each step echoing down the hallway toward me. My first thought was it had to be another driver, maybe the guy from the dark truck in the lot. I forced a laugh, called out, "Occupied, man." Just a sec. No answer. The steps kept coming, steady and deliberate, until they stopped right outside the restroom door. I stood there in the dark, not breathing, ears ringing with silence. Then the lights flicked back on. The hallway was empty. I didn't waste a second. I bolted out the door, heart hammering, keys already in my hand. When I reached my cab and opened the door, I stopped dead. There was a coat on the passenger seat, a long brown coat, damp and heavy looking. I swear it hadn't been there before. That seat is always clear. I keep it clean so I can crash without moving stuff around, but now it sat there like it belonged. The smell hit me next, mold, smoke, and something sour, like damp earth, that had been sealed away for years. The fabric was still warm, like someone had just taken it off. I slammed the door, climbed into the driver's seat, and fired the engine. I didn't stop again until I hit the Arkansas state line. When I finally pulled into a Waffle House lot, I checked the passenger seat. The coat was gone. No smell, no trace it had ever been there. Just cold vinyl where it had been sitting. I parked under the lights, locked the doors, and kept the engine running until dawn. Didn't sleep a wink, didn't even blink for long. Every time my eyes drifted to the passenger seat, I half expected to see that coat again, or worse, the man wearing it. I never ran that route again. When dispatch asked why, I told them I had personal reasons. They didn't argue, and to this day, I can't drive through Oklahoma without feeling like he's still out there, waiting in the median, staring into the dark. I've heard truckers joke about picking up hitchhikers. Most of us know better. It's a gamble you don't want to take. But now and then, the road has a way of making decisions for you. This happened to me about 7 years ago, on a run from Amarillo, Texas, up to Pueblo, Colorado. It was one of those endless night drives where the sky swallows you whole, and the only light is what your headlights carve out in front of you. It was just after midnight when I spotted her, a lone figure standing by the shoulder near a mile marker in the panhandle, arm outstretched, thumb pointed skyward. Normally, I'd pass without a second thought, but something about the way she stood there gave me pause. She wasn't waving frantically, wasn't stepping toward traffic, just waiting, still as a statue, like she already knew I'd stop. Against my better judgment, I slowed down and eased onto the shoulder. She stepped into the beam of my headlights, and I could finally see her. Young woman, maybe mid-20s, wearing jeans and a faded denim jacket, long dark hair that looked damp, like she'd been standing in the mist for hours. Her face was pale, almost gray, but her eyes were sharp, locked on me in a way that made my chest tighten. I rolled down the passenger window a crack. "Need a lift?" I asked. She nodded slowly, no smile, no relief, just a nod. Something in me hesitated, but I reached across, unlocked the door, and she climbed in without a word. The cab filled with a damp, earthy smell, like wet leaves after a storm. She settled into the passenger seat, folded her hands in her lap, and stared straight ahead. I cleared my throat, trying to break the silence. "Where are you headed?" Her voice was soft, flat. "North." That was all she said. I nodded, pulled back onto the highway, and let the wheels hum. I tried again a few miles later. "You from around here?" She turned her head slightly, looked at me with eyes that seemed too dark in the glow of the dashboard lights. Not anymore. I swear the temperature dropped as she said it. My heater was cranked, but a chill crept over me, stiffening my fingers on the wheel. I told myself it was just nerves, just my brain messing with me, because I'd broken my own rule about picking people up. The next 30 miles passed in silence. Every now and then, I'd glance at her, and every time, she was in the exact same position, hands folded, staring out the windshield like she was watching something I couldn't see. Finally, she spoke. "You'll let me out up ahead." Her tone wasn't a question. It was like she already knew what was coming. A green sign flashed by, announcing a rest area 2 miles ahead. Without thinking, I nodded. My throat was dry, my palms sweaty against the wheel. Something in me just wanted her gone, even though I couldn't explain why. I pulled into the rest stop, parked under the flickering light of a single lamppost. She opened the door, climbed down without a word, and started walking toward the empty picnic tables. No goodbye, no thank you, just that same steady walk into the shadows. I sat there for a minute, heart pounding, telling myself it was over. Then I glanced at the passenger seat. It was damp. The fabric was soaked through, like she'd been dripping water the entire ride. But my floor mat was dry, no puddles, no footprints, just the seat, wet and cold to the touch. I slammed the door, threw the truck into gear, and didn't look back. By the time I hit Pueblo the next morning, I'd almost convinced myself it was just some strange encounter, a weird but explainable ride with someone who gave me the creeps. But 2 weeks later, in a diner outside Amarillo, I overheard a couple of drivers talking. One swore he'd picked up a girl on the same stretch of road, dark hair, denim jacket, pale face. Said she vanished from his cab before he even made it to the next exit. The other driver nodded, said he'd heard the stories too. They called her the Panhandle Hitcher. Some said she drowned years back in a flash flood and never made it home. Others claimed she was just a trick of exhaustion and bad lighting. I didn't join the conversation. I just paid my bill, left a tip, and walked out into the night. But every time I roll through that part of Texas, I keep my eyes on the shoulder, and I swear, sometimes, just for a second, I see her standing there, thumb out, waiting, like she knows I'll stop again. Long-haul trucking can get lonely, but the radio helps. CB chatter, local stations, even static. It all keeps you tethered to the world when the road feels endless. But there are nights when even the radio turns against you. I'll never forget one night in Nebraska, headed east on Interstate 80 with a refrigerated load bound for Chicago. It was late, 2:30 in the morning, I think. The sky was cloudless, the kind of night where the stars hang sharp and bright, almost too many to take in at once. The highway stretched ahead, empty and quiet. I hadn't seen another set of headlights in miles. That's when the CB crackled to life. "Breaker 19, you out here with us?" The voice was flat, metallic, like it had been filtered through layers of distortion. I leaned forward, thumbed the mic. "Yeah, this is eastbound out of Kearney. Who's this?" No response, just a burst of static. A minute later, more voices joined in. Not one, not two, but a whole chorus of them. Low, overlapping, like dozens of drivers talking at once, but slightly out of sync. Words tangled together, too fast and garbled to make sense. I caught fragments. "Keep rolling. Follow the line. Don't stop." Before it all dissolved back into static, I frowned, adjusted the squelch, checked my frequency. Everything looked normal, but the voices came back, stronger this time, rising and falling like a tide. And then, faint but clear, I heard a woman's voice cut through the noise. "Look behind you." My stomach dropped. I flicked my eyes to the mirror, half expecting to see headlights right on my tail. But there was nothing, just empty asphalt stretching into the dark. I gripped the wheel tighter, leaned forward, and tried to steady my breathing. The voices grew louder, sharper, until they seemed to fill the cab. The CB meter spiked red, though I wasn't transmitting. My radio hissed, whined, then fell silent. That's when I saw them. Headlights, a whole line of them, materializing in the distance behind me. Not one or two trucks, an entire convoy, at least 20 rigs, maybe more, perfectly spaced, all running in formation. Their lights burned too bright, glaring white instead of the usual warm halogen glow, and they were gaining on me fast. I eased into the right lane, figuring they'd blow past in a hurry. But when they reached me, they didn't pass. They surrounded me, 10 on each side, boxed in front to back. My mirrors filled with headlights, my cab washed in cold white light. I couldn't hear their engines, couldn't even feel the rumble of their tires on the pavement. Just silence, except for my own engine straining under the weight of the trailer. I grabbed the mic, tried again. "Convoy behind eastbound out of Kearney. What's the deal here?" No response. The trucks kept pace, their drivers invisible behind tinted glass. My pulse hammered. I scanned the signs along the road, trying to place where I was, but none of it looked right. Exits I should have passed by now never appeared. Landmarks I knew by heart were gone. It was like the highway had been replaced by something else entirely, an endless stretch of blacktop that belonged to them. Finally, the lead truck surged forward. Its headlights flared brighter, blinding me until all I could see was white. I shielded my eyes, fought the urge to swerve, and then, just as suddenly, the light was gone. So were the trucks. 1 second, I was boxed in by an army of rigs. The next, the highway was empty again. My CB crackled once more. Just a single voice this time, low and calm. "You're on the wrong road." I nearly jumped out of my skin. I yanked the cord, shut the radio off completely, and drove the rest of the night in silence. When dawn finally broke, I pulled into a way station outside Omaha. I must have looked half dead, because the attendant asked if I was all right. I told him I was just tired, needed coffee. He nodded, then asked, "You hear the convoy last night?" I froze. "What convoy?" He shrugged. "Some drivers say a ghost fleet runs that stretch every so often. Rigs from crashes, pileups, jackknifes. They say they roll together, looking for someone to follow them off the road." I didn't answer, just signed my ticket, got back in the cab, and kept driving east, but I haven't used my CB at night since. I've been driving for nearly 20 years, most of that spent crossing the Midwest. I know the open roads better than I know most people, and I've always taken comfort in their sameness. Cornfields, gas stations, lonely stretches of blacktop under endless skies. It's like a rhythm. But back in 2012, I had a run through southern Missouri that broke that rhythm in a way I still can't shake. I'd left Kansas City around 9:30 p.m., hauling furniture for a drop outside Little Rock. The route was familiar, interstate for most of it. Then I'd cut down Route 71 toward Joplin before sliding into Arkansas. That night, though, the CB chatter was almost dead silent. No jokes, no warnings, not even the usual bear in the air updates, just empty static. Around midnight, I started noticing the fog. At first it came in thin, rolling bands. That wasn't unusual for late spring, especially near the lowlands, but within minutes, the fog thickened until my high beams only lit up a wall of white. It felt like I was driving through a tunnel carved out of smoke. I slowed way down, hazard lights on, and focused on keeping the rig between the faded lane markers. That's when I saw the lights. Up ahead, maybe 50 yards through the fog, a pair of taillights glowed. I relaxed a little, figuring another trucker was crawling through at the same speed. I eased closer, glad to have a reference point. But something was off. The lights weren't moving at a steady pace. They'd flicker, vanish into the fog, then reappear a few seconds later, farther ahead, like the vehicle was jumping instead of driving. I tapped the CB. "Southbound on 71. Anybody out here? You seeing a rig with bad lights?" No response, just static. I leaned forward, squinting through the windshield. The lights looked wrong the closer I got. They weren't round like normal taillights. They were narrow, sharp, almost like slits. And they weren't red anymore. They'd shifted into a pale, bluish-white glow. Before I could process it, the light swerved hard across the road. I braced, slamming the brakes. The fog thinned for just a moment, and I saw it. It wasn't a truck. It wasn't even a car. It was... I don't know what the hell it was. A long, low shape, black as the pavement, with those slit-like lights burning where a windshield should have been. No wheels that I could see, just a hovering glide inches above the asphalt. It shot across the highway and vanished into the trees. The fog swallowed everything again, leaving me shaking behind the wheel. My brakes hissed, and the silence that followed was so heavy, it pressed against my ears. I told myself I was tired, hallucinating. Maybe I'd been staring too long at empty road. But when I rolled into a truck stop outside Joplin an hour later, I noticed something that made my stomach drop. My trailer sides were streaked with moisture, normal for a foggy night. But cutting through the wet condensation, from front to back, were two perfect lines. Not scratches, not dirt. Clean lines, as though something sharp had skimmed the surface of the trailer while keeping perfect distance. I asked the fuel attendant if they'd ever seen weird lights on 71. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded slowly and said, "Best not to chase them. Folks that follow don't come back the same." To this day, I won't take that stretch of 71 after dark. I don't care how far out of the way it takes me. I'll stick to the interstate. Some rhythms, once broken, you don't tempt again. I used to drive team runs with a guy named Nate back in the late 2000s. We split long hauls from Texas to Arkansas, switching seats when one of us was too tired to keep our eyes open. But in October of 2009, Nate suddenly quit. No explanation, just handed in his badge and keys. His last words to me were, "I can't do nights anymore, you'll see." He laughed, but it wasn't real laughter, more like something cracked. A week later, I picked up a solo run from Amarillo to Little Rock. Nothing unusual, just a standard load of construction equipment. I left in the late afternoon, figuring I'd push through and make the border before dawn. About an hour past the Oklahoma line, I spotted him. On the shoulder, just standing there in my headlights, was a man in a long, heavy brown wool coat. Collar pulled up, hem soaked, like he'd been standing in rain. But it was a clear night, not a cloud in sight. He didn't flag me down, didn't move, just stood completely still. Normally, I'd chalk it up to a drifter or hitchhiker, but something about him made my skin crawl. The way the shadows clung to his face, like my headlights refused to light it. I radioed it in as a possible pedestrian near mile marker 197 and kept moving. 10 minutes later, I saw him again. Same coat, same stance. Only now he was on the opposite side of the highway. There were no exits, no turnarounds. He couldn't have gotten there on foot. My hands started sweating on the wheel. By the time I pulled into a rest stop, my nerves were frayed. The place was half dead, just two vending machines and a flickering light above the restroom. I splashed water on my face, tried to shake it off. Then the power cut. Not a flicker, a complete blackout. The silence pressed in heavy. That's when I heard the footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming down the tiled hallway toward me. I froze. "Occupied," I called out, trying to sound steady. The steps didn't stop. They grew louder, closer, until they stopped right outside the restroom door. My heart hammered so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Then, as suddenly as it went, the power came back. The hallway was empty. I bolted, didn't wash my hands, didn't grab a snack, just sprinted back to my truck. And that's when I saw it, sitting neatly on the passenger seat, where there'd been nothing before. A brown wool coat, damp, warm, like someone had just taken it off. I slammed the door, floored it, and didn't stop until I hit Arkansas. When I finally dared to check again, the coat was gone. But the smell lingered, mold and stale smoke, like an old basement. That was my last Oklahoma night run. Every so often, when I pull into a rest stop, I glance at the passenger seat, and sometimes I swear the cushion looks just a little too depressed, like someone's sitting there,